Welcome to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, covering the week that was in professional wrestling. And welcome to the Juice Box. I am Juice Springsteen. Once again, here to talk about the week that was in professional wrestling. As stated in the intro, every single week, you can follow me on Twitter at JuicySteen. Follow my Instagram at JuicyWrestlingCloset. You can follow this podcast at juicysteen.podbean.com. Hopefully, if you guys listen to this on your Apple Podcasts app, you can rate and review this 5 stars. That would be fantastic. And as always, juicysteen.podbean.com is where you can find the show as well. Not too crazy of a show this week. More happening in the last 24 to 48 hours outside of the ring than in-ring, although we will get to the in-ring as we normally do. But a lot of the outside of the ring stuff we can kind of begin with, and then we'll go through a little bit of Raw and some of the stuff that happened with Raw this week, as they tried to rebound from the dreadful Raw After Mania, or at least that I thought was a dreadful Raw After Mania show. And then a lot of the main headlines here are from the AEW side, which, we are really coming close to another Summer of Punk, which I can't even fathom. I know we're just going to jump kind of into this here, but I cannot believe we are really on the cusp of another Summer of Punk. First and foremost, shout out to the group chat that I'm in, Wrestling Nation. A lot of these guys are CM Punk either fans or are totally against the guy, so this is the perfect beginning to the show for those guys. One of those being Josh Cross, who was on this show before, as well as Donnie, who more or less is on the fence with CM Punk, but I believe that good business will turn everybody's thoughts around potentially, as long as it's good for the business and good for everybody in the business overall. Let's just get right into it. CM Punk, apparently the return is tentatively scheduled or planned in some aspects. This is from Fightful Select, Sean Ross Sapp. Of course, the report was the other day, I believe, FTR Harwood had a quote where, he talked to CM Punk. CM Punk wants to come back for the fans, and he misses the fans, and that's great and all, but then a lot of stuff got ramped up in the last 24 hours. Now that we have an announced June 21st Dynamite in Chicago, before the Forbidden Door pay-per-view that weekend, June 21st. That show is now set in stone, so it will be very interesting to see if that is a show potentially that Punk could return in. There were apparently pitches to get him back, before time, announce this return ahead of the game. But I think just being reported is enough, because remember last time when Punk debuted for AEW, it was the quote worst kept secret in professional wrestling, as everybody pretty much knew what was happening, but nothing was ever formally announced, and in effect made everything that much more exciting. So I'm on board with not announcing it and just seeing what happens. Apparently, though, Punk has been hoping to get some work with the elites, the Bucks, Kenny, what have you. And in those talks, obviously it doesn't seem like the elite would want to work with Punk after the fallout from Brawl Out at All Out. But I don't know. And also, there was also reports that a meeting between Chris Jericho, who, for better or worse, is really a locker room leader in AEW, and CM Punk to maybe see what's out there, see what could be done, if anybody would want to talk. what those talks could lead to, anything in that realm really, to get something going. Again, to make good business decisions. I don't know. I'm not really split on this, to be honest with you. I'm really for this. I've said it since the beginning. Once we kind of hashed everything out with what happened during this whole thing and how it just seemed like a backstage blow up that, just didn't need to happen, but we know why, and things, tend to even out. And now, once, cooler heads maybe won't prevail, but when money talks, people tend to listen. And I really do believe, as a wrestling fan, that even with the drama and everything with Punk and with WWE and what have you, and now I've been AEW, all the things that have happened with his career, I do deep down think that he is willing to do business, even at the expense of what happened. So I'm sure he didn't want the thing at All Out to happen, as I'm sure the Bucks and Kenny and Colt and Ace, I'm sure all those guys didn't want this type of thing to go down, but it did. But I think now everything's kind of cleared up. We're almost a year after. We're about four months away from it being kind of a full year. I know it doesn't seem like a long time since it happened, but it really is. We're in April, and the thing happened on Labor Day at All Out last year. So to me, I really do think that they all can see the money in a feud or a program, and not just a program. I mean, you could do a separate CM Punk Kenny Omega program. You could do Kenny, the Elite Kenny and the Bucks versus CM Punk and FTR, especially with, apparently, now I'll get into another little side note here. Apparently, FTR has stated, that they have signed a 4-year contract with AEW, which is fantastic. I really didn't think they were going to go back to WWE at any point, purely because they did a lot there. They really set themselves up well there, and just like kind of like Cody, but the reverse. Now they went to AEW to kind of really, help the tag division there and become a great tag team themselves, and they, went above and beyond that. Now are considered one of, if not the best tag team in the wrestling business. They said that they will be retiring in 4 years. Now, again, it's wrestling. Terry Funk retired 4 times before, 1985. So you never really know what retiring, quote unquote, means for wrestlers. But I don't know. I tend to see FTR as a group of guys, 2 guys that could have 4 years of just, great matches with great teams and elevating teams and doing what they always do and staying relevant while doing it and just hanging it up when they want to hang it up and then enjoy their family life from then on. I'm sure they could work in behind the scenes or whatnot and just not in the ring, at least in ring work. But if that's the case, then hey, here's the money. Let's have this happen now. We have the time. If it was pitched, it's just the money is so obviously right there. And I know a lot of critics will say, well, it's a backstage thing. No one pays attention to the backstage. Why would a company go about the backstage real life problem that happened and try to turn it around and it's not going to make money? And I don't see how it couldn't make money. Because AEW, of the 2 major companies in North America right now, AEW does have a stake in the internet game. They talk to Meltzer, they have Sean Ross. They talk to these guys. They're in the community. Tony Khan will tweet about stuff. It's more of a open forum for better or for worse. But for better is if majority of your audience is online talking about this thing that happened and it's looked at as a negative, but it could be a positive if the guys just kind of grab it by the horns and collectively try to just make something good out of something bad, then that might help you out. And being more in tune with the internet wrestling community could help AEW and Tony Khan out if they could get these guys to work together cohesively, which would be, again, better for them, better for AEW, and better for the wrestling fans as a whole. So, I really think this is the right move. I do. I think it would be great for Punk to come back. And just, to me, here's my thing is I think the worst is behind us. And I know I could be eating crow if Punk comes back and he just ruins it again. But I just don't see a way that Punk could leave, not even leave, but he was hurt, regardless. So he wasn't really going to wrestle, much with this injury and stuff. So all these things happen after he got injured the first time, and then this happens, and then he's out. So a lot of the worst possible things, I think, that could have happened to Punk in AEW, and then this second round of his career here after his WWE run, I think now he can look forward and make amends with the things that, caused some problems, especially with the most current, more recent problem with the All Out thing. And I think that he can, I think he could look it in the face and just make good business out of it. And if I believe how serious CM Punk takes it, and if I'm right about that, then I don't see how it would not be great business across the board. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. And I'm sure everybody else will be waiting as well. Those AEW fans that are really desperate to see it. So that's going to be something down the line. That's been the biggest news of the last couple of days is that CM Punk now we could be having a summer of Punk. And again, this is the timing of this. With last week's, WrestleMania was a huge success. Great show. Both nights were fantastic. Even with the booking, some people, might not have liked it, but I thought that the Roman Cody thing was fine. It was the night after that really stuck in my craw and didn't really give much to forward anything with Roman, all while making Cody go through, something else just to get momentum. I discussed this last week. I don't know what that really entails, if it's anything, worthwhile, but to me, I just think that the timing of the mediocre Raw after Mania and now the CM Punk stuff, it seems like Tony Khan understands that it's not, and the sale of WWE, of course, to Endeavor. It's not that WWE's on the ropes necessarily, but they are in a state of, we just sold the company, we had a great WrestleMania, but our TV now, it's going well, but is Vince back? Is he not back? What's the creative look like? We have Triple H coming on Raw and SmackDown telling us it's going to be fine. And again, we'll get into this a little bit later, but we have a WWE Draft coming up. This is the time post-WrestleMania where things can pick up for other companies because it more or less is a downtime in theory for WWE, although they're going to Puerto Rico next month and Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, which, as of this recording, breaking news, it is now going to it's not going to be King of the Ring in Saudi Arabia. It apparently now is going to be Night of Champions in Saudi Arabia, which is an interesting diversion from the King and Queen of the Ring. I think that those tournaments final could happen still at that show, but now it seems as if it were to happen as Night of Champions now, this is almost a guarantee that you're going to get a Roman Reigns title defense. And because it's in Saudi, I'm not sure it's going to be someone where we're going to get a change of the title, but we might get an interesting match. May I say potential triple threat or someone we're not really talking about right now could get that title shot? I'm not sure. But I thought it was interesting now seeing that it's now Night of Champions. Just a little quick breaking news note as I record this particular episode. But yeah, CM Punk could come back. I think it's great for business if they pull it off and they do it right. Of all people, I do believe Tony Khan. I do believe he has the foresight to make the most of this if all parties are on board. And I think he is the guy that can kind of get them on board. So we'll see how that translates if it in fact does happen. So that's exciting. As I said, yeah, we have a WWE Draft, which, is apparently coming. We don't know when it's coming. And here comes another problem. But the thing with the WWE Draft, I used to love the WWE Draft. Whenever it was, the one I remember vividly, it was the 2005 draft. So this might have been the second or third draft since they did the first draft. It might have been the second draft overall since the initial one in 2002. But it was a huge deal when the WWE champion at the time, John Cena, who was on SmackDown with the WWE title, got drafted to Monday Night Raw. It was June 6, 2005. I can remember it like it was yesterday. It was in St. Louis. He wore that St. Louis basketball jersey. Chris Jericho highlight reel was the segment. I remember it again like it was yesterday. It was an amazing draft. It felt like it meant something. We also had Batista went to SmackDown, and we had so many interesting drafts over the years, but that was when SmackDown and Raw were definitively separate brands. But my issues with it now there are a few. One, the brands aren't really separated as much as I'd like. Purely, I think, because the titles, mainly the Undisputed Universal Championship, and the tag titles are both just solo entities of two sets of titles. Roman, of course, with both sets of world titles, and Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn with the sets of tag titles. If they were to split them, they'd have to split them again to Raw and SmackDown and WWE and Universal titles, respectively. How do you organically do that? You got to have one of the guys maybe lose. You put a draft out as someone will go to Raw, someone will go to SmackDown. But here's the thing. The WWE Draft is based on a competition between Raw and SmackDown that, quite frankly, doesn't exist. There really is no competition. There's a reason why last year Survivor Series was kind of restarted with a new format of War Games, because Triple H got a hold of it. Triple H loved the War Games concept, and he was also not a fan of the, quote, outdated brand supremacy warfare that was basically conjured up to just have this one pay-per-view every year. And they did used to have a pay-per-view for that called Bragging Rights, in which I was at the first one in 2009 in Pittsburgh, headlined by John Cena, Randy Orton in a 60-minute Iron Man match. And they had a 7-on-7 SmackDown versus Raw match for this trophy. That was pretty cool. And that was still around the time of drafts meaning something and Raw and SmackDown being separate. And I also felt Raw and SmackDown had a nice separation in 2016, 2017, when SmackDown was live on Tuesdays. The Mauro Ranallo era, the AJ Styles era, Luke Harper, Bray Wyatt, James Ellsworth, Dean Ambrose era on SmackDown. That felt like, Becky Lynch with the SmackDown shirt on, fighting everybody on Raw with the bloody nose, becoming the man. Even that felt, way more important than what it does right now in regards to separate brands. So with a competition between Raw and SmackDown not really being a thing unless they say it is for a pay-per-view, which is just, again, conjured up garbage, then this is not effective. The draft isn't effective. And it's only effective if it happens where titles can be split and they stick with the brands. I don't hate that there's one title for both, but we are still aware that they are two sets and they're just one champion. So it's either they just combine them and unify them all together and just get rid of the sets, or split them up. And I don't know how you do that. But the draft is not tentatively set for a date, though. It's been announced, but we don't know when it'll happen. Triple H did say it will change the game. And apparently everybody on every roster is up for grabs. So it'll intrigue me until it doesn't. But we'll see. We really will. I just, I don't know. The other part of it that I really have issue with is it happens and then it doesn't happen the next year, and then it doesn't happen the next year, and then it happens maybe the following year, but it's at a different time of year. If they had a specific time for a draft, and it didn't even have to be yearly, it could be every 2 years. That would be great. You'd get 2 solid years of competition on Raw and SmackDown and build up these guys and girls to a level of, man, if they do get drafted potentially to another show, how much bigger would that show be? Because right now the draft, what are you drafting for? You're drafting what? The best wrestlers for what? Nothing. You're drafting them for what? Better ratings? Again, it's a conjured up thing. They just kind of make stuff up. I get it. Everything is a work. Wrestling is a work. Life is a work. But there's no stakes. There's no incentive to draft a guy from Raw or SmackDown to the other brand. They don't even make up something. It's like, oh, we got a good wrestler, but for what? So he can win matches? There's no stakes. It's very baseline of an issue I have. But they don't explain anything like that, and it's kind of tough to navigate and to get excited for a draft when there is no competition. There are no, there's no brand supremacy. There's no SmackDown versus Raw. There was a great video game based on this premise alone, and that's why it was so successful throughout the early 2000s and late 2000 decade. So, look, I'm excited for the draft, but with bated breath, I'll give him a chance. Triple H at the helm. It could be a different draft than we're used to, or something that we could really sink our teeth into. Okay. Before we go into some more AEW, I would like to let's do this first. First, let's do this week. I haven't done this in a while, but I like to do a two-pronged thing with this. This week in pro wrestling history, this show's coming out, of course, on April 14th, but on April 13th, 1997, one of, if not the most important pay-per-views in pro wrestling history occurred. ECW, Barely Legal. This was the first pay-per-view for ECW. Of course, it took place in the ECW Arena, Philly, April 13th, 1997. They really tried to get this show, Barely Legal, as a pay-per-view in 96, but it seemed that the Request TV folks canceled the show initially once the mass transit incident, of course, happened at an ECW event. If you don't know about that, that's an event where an underage man falsified his identification, got into a match with New Jack, among others. Had a lot of injuries in the match. Didn't know what he was doing. Ended up dying later on. Not that night, but just after the fact. And it was just it was just not good. The guy didn't die as a result of these injuries, but it was just a bad look for ECW, and for New Jack, but New Jack had done everything. New Jack had probably had a few bodies racked up until then. But either way, the pay-per-view companies were not a fan of that type of thing happening with this company. But come into, early 97, and this is when famously WWE helped ECW out, threw them a bone, threw them a check that would not bounce. And, they had the Manhattan Center ECW invasion, which was pretty cool. And it was just pretty interesting to see the hype for this show get up and running. And, the show itself, my God. First, though, if you've ever watched the documentary Beyond the Mat, which if you haven't, I eagerly encourage you to try to find a copy on DVD, or if you can find it streaming somewhere, you should totally watch it. It is a fantastic an introspective documentary in the world of professional wrestling. And Terry Funk is one of the guys that they document in this film, and you get the backstage pre-show speech that Paul Heyman gave to the roster at ECW before this pay-per-view happened. I won't go into it all, but I mean, if you find the clip, it is a rousing speech. Anybody would run through a brick wall for Paul Heyman after hearing that speech, and they quite literally almost did. Great pay-per-view. We had the Eliminators versus the Dudleys in a tag title match. RVD versus Lance Storm. You had a 6-man tag with Great Sasuke, Gran Amata, and Masato Yugashuji defeating Takumi Shinoku, Terry Boy, and Dick To Go. Shane Douglas defeated Pitbull, number 2. Taz and Sabu finally had their confrontation after months and months and months of build-up. A 3-way dance to determine the number 1 contender for the ECW title with Terry Funk, Sandman, and Stevie Richards. And then, of course, the winner of that match fought Raven for the ECW World title. And it's just a historical night. I mean, it's such an interesting time in the business. 1997 was such a huge year for WWE and WCW because the next year, 98, was through the roof. And, you know, the Austin era began. Goldberg and the Georgia Dome. Karl Malone and Jay Leno in 98. Now, in 97, you had Rodman, you know. You had Luger winning the title. You had Starrcade 97 being built up. You had Austin and Hart at WrestleMania 13. You had the Montreal Screwjob. 97 was a huge year. Arguably my favorite year overall for wrestling. And Barely Legal is a part of that, you know. Under 1,200 people were there live for this show. But the energy for every single match, because the fans knew this is it's not their one shot, but it could be. This is their one shot, ECW's one chance to really put themselves on the map in a positive way. And I think they went above and beyond that. They had a hell of a show. It's so memorable. I got chills just talking about the matches, to be honest with you. But that was this week in pro wrestling history. It's wild. What was that? 26 years ago. 26 years ago this week. And I'd like to do, if I can remember it every single week, you know, getting older, getting up there in age, kind of forget stuff every now and again. I'm going to try to do a recommendation for a wrestling pay-per-view, a vintage wrestling pay-per-view. And I say vintage, anything within the last 5 years I probably won't count. I probably won't even go as far as 10 years, probably. But anything further than that, I will definitely recommend. You'll get a lot of WCW pay-per-views from me to suggest. But my recommendation to watch one wrestling pay-per-view this week would be Barely Legal 1997. It's quick, it's concise, it's not like a WrestleMania show. It's a great, digestible show, and it's so exciting, it's thrilling. And again, if you go into it knowing everything around it, like WWE helped fund this thing, and wrestling's super hot right now, so they gotta, man, if the ECW could get this show to happen and it be successful, that could really help them out, and it did, you know. But going into the show, you don't even know that, you know, the fans are probably just very anxious and nervous for the show to do so well, and the talent went just above and beyond their expectations for performing. And it's a legendary show, you know, and it's one of my favorite shows to go back and watch because the energy is just unbelievable. So I would recommend Barely Legal 1997 to watch as my recommendation for this week. Now we got a little bit left here. Hopefully we'll tackle a few more topics here before we close out this week. We'll get into some AEW at the end, though, because we do have a Pittsburgh AEW Dynamite next week, which I cannot be more excited about. And we'll get into some AEW talk towards the end of the show for that. But let's tackle some WWE, of course. We have new women's tag team champions. Now, Lita was attacked backstage. We don't know who it was, but I have a feeling we do know who it was because in the end of this match, Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez win the titles. But after the match, Trish, by God, Stratus, hits Becky Lynch with the chick kick and knocked her out cold. And we have a heel Trish Stratus. Look, SummerSlam 2019, we had The Fiend debut, but I more or less remember the Trish Stratus Charlotte Flair match, which was an unbelievably fantastic match. So 4 years ago, yet now we're in 2023, and it almost seems as if we're going to be having another high-quality match between the legend, Trish Stratus, and one of the top women in pro wrestling now with Becky Lynch. So Trish getting these high-profile matches, and I'm assuming putting over Becky will be a great move. Hopefully it's at SummerSlam. And we'll talk a little bit more about SummerSlam here shortly. And of course, this is a minor note, but some were quick to point out that when Becky Lynch was backstage discussing what happened to Lita, she mentioned that Lita was taken to a local medical facility. Now, it's either one of two things. It's either a joke, to throw back to the old way of, it's not a hospital, it's a local medical facility. And, the terms that Vince would have everybody use to, this is what WWE says, this is how WWE goes, it's the WWE way. Then, now, forever, together, whatever, all that, stuff. But it could be that Vince is actually back and would want that verbiage and dialogue back into the weekly programming, which would not be good. So hopefully it is the former, not the latter. But great for Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez. Big Liv Morgan fan. She's had a hell of a last couple of years, and I'm really excited to see, her succeed more. And good for Raquel as well. I think Raquel has a high ceiling, though, in the singles realm. But, we'll get there. We'll definitely get there. We had a big Haas fight between Bronson Reed and Bobby Lashley, but don't know if it's gonna, lead to anything more. They had a little encounter during the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, so this is their match now, but it was a double count out, so we might see a feud with these guys. I'm not really sure, but two big hosses maybe gets Bronson Reed to a higher spot, as I've been saying that he is one of the guys in traffic. He's stuck in traffic. He doesn't know how to get any further on the card. But Bobby Lashley is a guy who I think could help that out. So, we'll see. And keep in mind, we are less than a month away from Backlash or WrestleMania Backlash. I don't know what the hell's going on. Cody Rhodes said WrestleMania Backlash after it's just been promoted as Backlash. And then after he cuts that promo, WWE tweets out Backlash in all caps. And then just today, as of this recording on Thursday, I saw a tweet from WWE talking about WrestleMania Backlash. What are we doing? Pick a damn name. Man, and then King of the Ring, Queen of the Ring, now it's Night of Champions. Come on. It's very confusing. So, we'll see. See what else here happened on Raw. Now, Cody Rhodes, very interesting. Came out to give a promo. He apologized for losing, but he said it was just a bump in the road. He's scared of Lesnar, but he still wants to fight him. He didn't get interrupted, and it was a good overall promo to help him out and to boost him. Saying how he felt about the loss at Mania without really being all woe is me and blah blah blah. Now I do think the hard times are coming. I do sense that he's going to have to get through Lesnar to get to Roman Reigns again. But here's what I'm going to posit to you right now. I don't know if it's me being a wrestling historian. I don't know if it's me being a mark. I don't know if it's me being a nerd with no life that loves pro wrestling, or an amalgamation of all three. But I will propose this to you. SummerSlam 1993. Auburn Hills, Michigan. Lex Luger, American-made Lex Luger, who traveled across the country in the Lex Express, which was a bus, a traveling bus, faced Yokozuna, who was billed as a Japanese star, sumo star, but he was a Samoan. And Luger challenged Yokozuna for the WWE title. He was supposed to win. This was his moment to win. Lex Luger was supposed to win this match, take the bus across the country, completing the tour in Auburn Hills for SummerSlam 93. But Lex Luger won by countout. And he did not, in sense, finish the story. SummerSlam 2023. Dare I propose? Cody Rhodes, who drives around on a bus. The American Nightmare. Also wrestling in Detroit, Michigan this time, but Michigan nevertheless, for the WWE Undisputed Universal title against Roman Reigns, another Samoan. 30 years, 2 Samoans finish the story. I think the parallels could be a coincidence if this were to in fact happen. However, it is too coincidental for a nerd like me to seek out these types of things and present them to you guys, the audience. I cannot help but see those parallels. And I find it fascinating, especially since the depression of Cody losing at WrestleMania, even with that shot of Cody with Roman and everybody in the background, very reminiscent of kind of WrestleMania 10, where Luger is one of the guys holding up Bret Hart. You know, Luger should have won well before, and now he has to hold up somebody, and Cody should have won, but now he's just sitting in the ring while the champion leaves. And just the parallels of certain events, the fact that it's 2 Samoans, even though one was not billed as such. SummerSlam in Michigan, 30 years apart. Both guys have a bus. Both guys have American ties. I want to believe it. Everybody said after WrestleMania, "Oh, don't worry, Cody will get the belt back. He'll get another shot at the title. He'll get the belt at SummerSlam." It's as simple as that. Why not? Ford Field, 80,000, huge stadium. American Nightmare wins it in the home of American Auto. How much more American can you get? You know? So I posit a 30-year finish the story. And I don't see how it couldn't come to fruition. At least it would if I were booking. And I'll posit another little nugget here. I do think that, you know, I've been discussing with some of my wrestling friends and just people online in general, there's a way not only to maybe split the titles off of Roman, but Roman could lose the titles and not be pinned. I just think as tough as it is for me to think that Roman could lose a title without it being in a one-on-one, as I think Roman should lose the titles or something. Whenever Roman loses these titles, it should, in theory, not be theory, but it should be to one guy in a one-on-one match to put that guy over. However, history suggests, and I would wager, that it would almost be beneficial and better overall for Roman Reigns to get into some sort of triple threat match potentially with Cody, maybe Gunther, maybe a 4-way with Gunther, Lesnar, and Cody, and Roman. And Roman doesn't have to take a pinfall to lose the titles. Roman stays strong. He destroys everybody, I'm sure, in the match, but something else happens to lead him down another path, and maybe Cody wins the title that way. I know it's not popular, and I know you'd want to put one guy over to beat Roman to have that, but I know how WWE works. I know that they like to get as much out of everybody as possible, and I think a triple threat or fatal 4-way could do that. But will that happen? I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure they would want to go down that route, but they had a shot to give Cody the title straight up, and they didn't. So we'll have to see what they want to do at Backlash or WrestleMania Backlash. And Night of Champions now, who will win Money in the Bank? Who will be at SummerSlam? We don't know. So I'm looking forward to a lot of the stuff going on. I think there's a lot of potential. And now, with both the companies, as we'll now kind of slide into AEW, because not much more interesting, I thought, happened on Raw. More interference with, the Usos and Solo with the KO match. And then we had Riddle and Sami Zayn come and make the save. I'm sure it'll be a 6-man with Solo and the Usos versus Riddle, KO, and Sami at Backlash in Puerto Rico. But we'll see. But outside of that, not much else happened on Raw. But as I was saying earlier, I think the excitement of not just CM Punk, but you probably are going to get a fatal 4-way with the pillars of AEW at Double or Nothing, which will be exciting. It's fresh. It's new. I mean, I know they're pillars and they've been there for 4 years, but it's fresh in the sense of you got all these younger guys that have been around since the beginning now all getting this major opportunity to all shine at the same time. Regardless of who wins the match, you'll probably be better off, all 4 guys, for it. You'll probably be better off having all 4 guys in one match, bouncing off ideas with each other, bouncing off, certain spots. And I just think there's a lot of good that could come out of having all these guys in one match at the same time on arguably one of the biggest stages. So, but with AEW, we'll come into some Dynamite stuff. We'll close out with Dynamite as we lead into next week, which will be AEW Dynamite in Pittsburgh and Rampage, which will be taped after Dynamite, airing Friday. Assuming it'll be taped to be aired at some ungodly hour well after the NBA playoffs are finished, if they are on next Friday as well, because this is the dark days for AEW Rampage as they are at the mercy of the NBA playoffs. But I think the highlight, well, first, let's give a round of applause. Jeff Hardy made another return. Say what you want. He's had his problems. He's had his issues in the ring and out of the ring, to be quite honest. But the biggest pop, potentially, of the night still went to Jeff Hardy returning last night. I don't know how much more he has left in the tank. I don't know how much more faith Tony Khan has in him or how many more strikes he can take before being sent away. But I like to think that Jeff Hardy can potentially just close out his career on his terms and not necessarily have to do anything super spectacular and get into a spot where, he could really mess up again. I don't know if they'll give him those types of opportunities knowing his history now. I know that they risked that before, but I think now they might understand a little better, and I think he'll be better off, going forward. I'm being optimistic, of course, but I like to see guys succeed. But outside of the Jeff Hardy return, I thought that the best promo, best segment of the whole night was Sting. Darby Allin had a great match. He defeated Swerve Strickland. Great match. Darby Allin wins. MJF interrupted him, came down and was talking about, his father and Darby with Sting, and it's daddy daycare. But man, Sting comes in. He might have had 5 minutes to talk, right? 5 minutes. And he comes in. He says he's not a daycare type of guy. He's more of a cheerleader. And pulls out these random little pom-poms and throwing them at MJF. I don't know when Sting became a prop comic, but I thought it was fun and innovative. I don't know. I'm a huge Sting fan. Sting has had the longevity of Undertaker, although not as many pitfalls in regards to nearing the end of his career having the hiccups in Saudi Arabia with Goldberg, although that might not have been his fault, or his last WrestleMania matches not being great, although he did do well with that Boneyard match and stuff. But Sting has had a renaissance. He, finally went to WWE after being in TNA, after carrying WCW, and then showing up in AEW, and he was the mentor for Darby, but he's still flying around doing crazy spots at the age of 62, and I could not be more happy for Sting. A guy that, there's a photo of me with my dad. I believe it was, I want to say it was 97, where my dad was Hollywood Hulk Hogan for Halloween, and I was dressed as Sting. Now, that tells you right there. Like, I was hook, line, and sinker in with the Sting thing back then, and I loved Sting growing up, and now he's still killing it all these years later. So yeah, he does the little pom-pom thing, and then, he mentions Cody and how MJF had that support system with Cody, and he mentioned Cody another time and was like, oh, I mentioned Cody, But it's just playful. It's Sting. He's a legend. He could say whatever he wants. And now, Darby has Sting, much like Sting had Flair. And that's how he went, he got on the map. And then he went from Surfer Sting to Crow and to Wolfpack, and he thanked Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and he still has a little Joker left in him, paying homage to his little bizarre, but I thought still fun run as the Joker Sting in TNA. Again, reinventing himself, just a little tweak in the paint. And he does say that he doesn't have a thirst for the world title anymore, but Darby does, And that although Showtime, Sting finally kind of said to the audience that Showtime's almost over for him, which is kind of sad. But hey, I think he's done a great job in AEW. I think he can still do a lot of stuff behind the scenes. And he could be on screen and not wrestle and be a part of AEW, or do anything he kind of wants, to be quite honest. And I would honestly like to see him have his final match. Although I'd like to see it in an American ring, I do think he could have a great swan song potential match at All In at Wembley Stadium, which would be, oh my God, it'd be fantastic. To see him at least get one big match in Wembley would be a great, great moment, I believe, for Sting. But we'll see. We'll see where Sting wants to retire and when he wants to do that. But he said it's, Showtime is just beginning for Darby. And that was that. Max spit in Darby's face, and of course, that was the end of that. But man, we're going to get this four-way, I think, with MJF, Darby, Jungle Boy, and not Ricky Starks. Why am I, botching this right now? We'll get to it. But it's going to be a fatal four-way between the pillars. And I don't know. I think I mentioned it earlier. But just Sammy Guevara. What am I talking about? Ricky Starks. Jesus. The four pillars having this opportunity, and again, MJF's been there. He had a dog collar match with Punk. He's had crazy matches. He's been up and down. He's done blood and guts and all these things that MJF has been a part of. But now to be at the very top of the card as the heel with three of the guys that MJF came up with, all gonna be going and gunning for his title, I think is an incredible storyline that I'm really glad that AEW is tapping into. That means you're gonna get a fresh world title match, really, for guys that might not have had this opportunity solo, but now they all get a shot, in one match. and hopefully it's the beginning of a lot for the other three guys, although I don't think MJF is going to lose the title. So we'll see. But outside of that, it was an okay night. I thought Buddy Matthews and Orange Cassidy had a great match. Orange Cassidy wins. Great contest. We'll see what he wants to do next with his... He has defended this international title or All-Atlantic title a lot and has been very successful. I'm very curious to see who will take this title from him going forward. I wouldn't be shocked if it's someone taking it from him, maybe at Forbidden Door. We'll see. We had the formation of Bullet Club Gold, which is, something interesting to think about. Jay White and Juice Robinson. Bullet Club Gold. I mean, sure. We'll see how it goes. We all know how NWO 2000 went. Jeff Hardy, like I said, made a great return, which was really cool. Blackpool Combat Club just destroyed the Elite. Well, Brandon Cutler and Nakazawa. But Kenny Omega comes out, and as he's standing on the stage distracting the other guys, the Young Bucks come in, and they beat up Moxley. And wow, I mean, I think we're getting close to a blood and guts match between the Elite and some people versus the Blackpool Combat Club and some other guys. So we got a lot of interesting stuff going on with the Elite going forward. I'm very much looking forward to it. And the fact that we could get Punk at the end of all this, near Wembley. Cannot wait for the Summer of Punk Volume 4. And then, I don't know, the main event kind of was flat to me. Chris Jericho and Keith Lee. Jericho won, and they kind of beat up Keith Lee. Shane, it seemed to be Swerve hitting Keith Lee with I don't know if it was just a foreign object. I couldn't really tell what it was, but he hit him. It was former tag partners, and they had this history, and he hit Keith Lee, and Keith Lee lost, but Adam Cole came to save the day. Saved the day when, Jericho was out there, and they left. And I think that the Keith Lee Swerve thing has somewhere to go, but I hope it goes and it's done quicker than it's been here. But I'm really just looking forward to a Chris Jericho-Adam Cole match because, like he's done before, I do believe Chris Jericho is ready to put another guy over. And I know Adam Cole doesn't need to be put over. He's already super over with everybody. But in regards to storylines, I believe that Jericho and Adam Cole will be a great match where Jericho can put Adam Cole over in a booking way. So this will be interesting. But yeah, this is an interesting week. A lot of outside the ring stuff. Inside the ring was, okay. A lot more, again, promo work and stuff was really at the forefront with the Cody thing, the Sting promo, and Jeff Hardy returning, and Trish heel turn. Just a lot of interesting things happening this week. I'm trying to get you guys to watch Barely Legal 97. We're all over the place. But as I said before, we've got AEW Dynamite and Rampage taping next Wednesday night at the Peterson Event Center in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I will be there. You can follow along with my exploits at Juicy Steen on Twitter for that show. It'll just be a fun night. It'll be 364 days since the last AEW show was here. It happened April 20th last year on a Wednesday, and now this year it's on the 19th. I'm hoping that they announce something for later on this year again. I'm still holding out hope that Pittsburgh gets a pay-per-view for AEW, although, at least in the future, and maybe not this year, but in the future, I just think that a Britt Baker headlined women's title main event could happen for a Pittsburgh AEW show, which would be a first for AEW having a women's main event, a pay-per-view. I just don't know when or where that would take place, if it were going to take place in Pittsburgh, especially when they do Chicago and Toronto and these bigger markets all the time. But they've done St. Louis, so come on, go to Pittsburgh. Come on. Throw us a bone. Quit giving us one show a year. We're a good town. Great wrestling town. Come on. But, it's going to be a great show. I can't wait. Should be a fun crowd. Should be a fun night. AEW is always a great, great time. And I will be looking forward to it for sure. So this has been another episode of the Juice Box. Again, as always, follow me on Twitter, Juicy Steen, at Juicy Wrestling Closet on Instagram. You can follow the show, juicysteen.podbean.com, and rate this 5 stars. Give it a review if you'd like on Apple, iTunes, podcasts, wherever you can listen to it there. That'd be great if you could leave a review. Tell them how you love the show. Or if you hate the show, but at least give it 5 stars, that would help very much. Once again, I'm Juice Springsteen. This has been the Juice Box, and I will see you guys next week with another episode of The Juice Box. That was The Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to The Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.